It started quietly, like most big things do. On a distant, peaceful planet surrounded by twin moons, life moved slowly. The people there, called Threlians, were gentle. They weren't built for war. They spent their days growing food, singing songs, and studying the stars. They had never seen real violence.
Ow.
Not once. Their cities were clean, their skies were calm, and for hundreds of years they lived without fear. But peace is a fragile thing. One day, without warning, large black ships appeared in the sky. These ships didn't speak. They didn't ask questions. They just came closer. And then the ground shook. Buildings fell. People screamed. The invaders called themselves the Kargaks. They were not interested in friendship. They wanted land, resources, and control. And they were ready to take it by force. The Threlians tried to talk, to offer peace, but the Kargaks didn't care. For them, kindness was weakness. Within a few days, 3 cities were gone. Families were torn apart. The Threlians didn't even know how to defend themselves. Their technology was advanced in learning and medicine, but they had no weapons. They had never needed them until now. In their panic, the Threlian Council remembered something old, the Signella distress beacon, created long ago in case of emergency. It had never been used. No one even knew if it still worked. But with no other hope, they sent it out anyway. A simple message blasted through deep space. We need help. Please? Anyone then. They waited. They waited while more ships came, while their people hid in caves and forests, while their cities burned slowly in the distance. They began to lose hope, but the message didn't disappear into nothing, far away. On the edge of another system, the signal reached a small Earth station. The humans were newer to space than the other species. They had only recently started joining galactic talks and alliances. Many still didn't trust them. They were different, rougher, louder, and Earth, as most aliens agreed, was a dangerous place, a death world, as they called it. A planet full of storms, predators, and things that could kill you in a second. But humans had survived there and now. When they heard the Threlian message, they didn't hesitate. They didn't send diplomats or scientists. They sent a team that was trained for chaos. A group used to landing in places no one else wanted to go. People who knew how to adapt, how to fight, and how to protect. They weren't polished, they weren't fancy, but they were serious. They were called Deathworlders, not because they were evil or cruel, but because they came from a planet that demanded strength, speed, and heart to survive. And now, that same strength was on its way to the Threlian system. The Threlians didn't know who was coming. They only knew the signal had been answered. Still, many were unsure. Would these new beings be just like the Kargaks or worse? Then, one morning, a small gray ship landed near the mountains where many survivors were hiding. It didn't look scary. In fact, it looked old, scratched, repaired 100 times. When the door opened, a group of humans stepped out, calm and quiet. No big entrance, no flags, just boots hitting the dirt and eyes scanning the hills. The Threlians watched from behind rocks and trees. These beings looked tired but focused, as if they had seen too many broken places before this one. One of the humans took off their helmet, looked around and said, "We're here to help." No fancy words, no promises. But in that one sentence, something changed. For the first time in weeks, the Threlians felt a small thing they hadn't felt since the first. Tack. Hope. The Threlians had never seen anyone like them before. The humans looked different, stronger, tougher, with eyes that scanned everything like they were always expecting something to go wrong. Their armor wasn't shiny or perfect. It had scratches, burn marks, and even handwritten messages on it. It looked like it had been through many battles and somehow survived. The Threlians stepped out slowly from behind the trees and hills. At first, they were scared. Would these humans hurt them too? But the humans didn't raise their weapons. They didn't shout. They simply waited, calm/patient. Then, one of the younger Threlians walked forward. Small steps, nervous hands. The human nearest to him slowly knelt down, removed their gloves, and placed one hand on their chest in a peaceful gesture. No words were needed. The message was clear. We mean no harm. That small moment opened the door. The three aliens led the humans to the hidden shelter in the mountains. It wasn't much, just a network of caves with some supplies, a few injured, and many frightened families. The humans moved gently through the place, checking on the wounded, offering water, sharing rations from their packs. One of them even handed a small child a piece of chocolate. The child smiled for the first time in days. Later that night, the two groups sat around small fires, trying to understand each other. The humans didn't know the Thralian language, and the Thralians couldn't speak human standard. But still, they found ways to communicate through gestures, drawings, and simple sounds. Somehow, it was enough. The humans asked questions using hand signs. Where are the enemies? How many ships? Where do they strike from? The Thralians answered the best they could, drawing maps with sticks in the dirt, showing ruined cities and enemy paths. Then, the humans went to work. The very next day, they started building defenses. They didn't wait for orders. They scouted the land, checked the hills, counted supplies. They used scrap metal to create simple warning devices. They helped build walls around the entrances to the caves. And when one of the Thralian tools broke, a human fixed it, using only a belt clip, some wire, and a rock. That's when the Thralians began to notice something strange, something powerful. The humans weren't just smart, they were adaptive. They could change their plans quickly, think on their feet, and use whatever was around them. To the Thralians, who had always followed routine and order, this was completely new. That evening, an older Thralian said something that stuck with everyone. They're not like the others who came in ships. These ones are like fire, dangerous, yes, but warm and full of life. But not everyone trusted them yet. A few Thralians whispered fears. What if the humans had their own reasons for helping? What if they were using this as a chance to take control? After all, they were still strangers from a planet known to be wild and full of danger. But that fear slowly started to fade. When the humans stayed up all night, taking turns on watch duty while the Thralians slept, no one had done that before. For the first time since the Kargax invasion, Thralians closed their eyes and slept without shaking. The humans didn't ask for thanks. They didn't brag or try to lead. They just did what needed to be done. Quietly, efficiently, with heart, and without realizing it. The Thralians had already started to change too. They stood a little taller. They watched the humans closely, learning, copying small movements. They didn't feel like helpless victims anymore. They started to believe they could stand again, because the humans weren't just helping, they were preparing them for something. Something bigger. Something coming soon. A few days passed. The skies stayed quiet, but no one felt safe. Everyone knew the Kargax were not done yet. They would return. And when they did, it would not be a small attack. It would be bigger, louder, and more deadly. The humans knew this too. They didn't rest much. Every hour was used for something. Building traps, setting up early warning systems. Teaching basic defense techniques to the three aliens who were willing to learn. Even the youngest human among them, barely an adult, worked with full focus, as if every second mattered. One morning, the Thralians watched a group of humans running drills with a few brave volunteers. The humans were fast, their movements sharp and clear. They didn't shout, but they gave firm instructions through gestures and quiet voices. They showed how to move quietly, how to avoid being seen, how to use the land as protection. The Thralians had never trained like this before. It was new, strange, but also exciting. They weren't just waiting anymore. They were preparing. Even those who had doubts before started to pay attention. One elderly Thralian, who had once called the humans too wild, now sat every day with a small notebook copying human strategies. Another, who had lost their family in the first attack, started helping build shields out of old farming tools and scraps. The humans encouraged them gently, not as teachers, but as equals. That made all the difference. In the middle of this preparation, something unexpected happened. One evening, a small ship flew over the mountain and crashed a few hills away. It was fast, smoking, and clearly in trouble. The humans were the first to respond. Without waiting, they grabbed medkits and rushed toward the wreck. The three aliens followed. Worried it could be another enemy ship, but when they arrived, they found a wounded alien inside, not a Kargax, not a three ants, something else he was. Badly injured and terrified. His ship had been hit while escaping a nearby system also attacked by the Kargax. The humans didn't hesitate. They pulled him out, stopped the bleeding, and carried him back. The Thrillians were shocked. "Why help him?" someone asked. "He's not one of us." One of the humans looked up and said, "He's breathing. That's enough." That answer spread like fire. It was short, simple, but powerful. That night around the fire, the rescued alien spoke softly. He told them the Kargax had been taking over system after system, said most planets had no time to fight back. No warnings, it's just surprise attacks. Followed by silence, and the Thrillian planet was next in line. Everyone sat quietly after that, but the humans didn't look afraid. They looked ready later. When the stars came out, two Thrillian children sat beside one of the humans and asked, "Why? Are you helping us? We're not strong. We have nothing to give." The human didn't answer right away. They looked up at the sky for a moment, then said, "Because someone once helped us when we had nothing. Now it's our turn." Simple words again, but they meant everything, the Thrillians realized. Something then. The humans weren't fighting just to protect others. They were fighting because they understood pain. They had lived through it. Their planet had taught them how to survive storms, beasts, and even their own mistakes. And now they were using that strength not to conquer, but to shield. These so-called Deathworlders weren't here to take control. They were here to stand in the fire, just to pull others out with them, and deep inside. The Thrillians were changing. They no longer felt like helpless beings hiding in caves. They were beginning to feel like defenders. Because when you stand beside someone who refuses to back down, you start to believe you can do the same. It started before sunrise. The sky was still dark when the first warning alarm buzzed through the cave walls. A small device built from scrap and set up by the humans near the edge of the forest picked up movement large ships entering the atmosphere. The Kargax were back, but this time, the Thrillians weren't running. The humans moved fast, like clockwork. No panic, no shouting. Each person knew their role. One checked the map, another helped. Move families deeper into the shelter. Third quickly gave the signal. Defensive positions now. The Thrillians followed, their hands shaking but their eyes determined. They were scared. Yes, but they were not helpless. Not anymore. Out on the ridge, a small team of humans took position behind a line of rocks. They had no big weapons, but just a few launchers, some hand-built traps, their instincts. One of them looked through a scope and counted 3 enemy ships, landing in the nearby valley. Then the ground began to shake. The Kargax soldiers came down hard and fast, stomping across the field like they owned the planet. Their armor was thick, their weapons heavy. They expected fear, surrender, easy victory. What they didn't expect was resistance. The first trap exploded as they stepped near the forest, sending smoke and sound in every direction. Not deadly, but loud enough to confuse. In that moment, the humans launched a quick strike targeting weak points, drawing the enemy's attention, and pulling them away from the caves. Then, they disappeared into the trees. The Kargax fired wildly, but their weapons hit only air and branches. They were used to controlling fear. But now, they were the ones being outplayed. The humans didn't fight face to face. They moved like ghosts, in and out. It's quiet and sharp. They knew the land. It learned its shape, and they were using it. Back in the caves, a group of Thrillians watched the distant fight with wide eyes. One of them, a quiet farmer just days ago, held a spear made from broken tools. He stood near the entrance, ready. Behind him, others held shields made from old doors and machine panels. They didn't want to fight, but they were ready to protect. Outside, the battle grew louder. A human engineer crawled into an old irrigation tunnel and planted a device made from a broken beacon and 2 power cells. When it triggered, a flash of light stunned the nearest Kargax unit, giving the humans enough time to regroup and strike again. It wasn't about firepower. It was about cleverness, timing, trust. Then something happened no one expected. One of the Kargax ships tried to rise again, likely to call for more backup. The humans saw it lifting, preparing to vanish into the clouds. But before it could escape, a Threlian stepped forward. Not a fighter, not a soldier.
Yes.
A young mechanic who had watched the humans closely over the past days. He ran toward the ship, holding a small launcher built from scrap and energy coils. No one told him to do it. He just knew it had to be done. He fired once, straight into the ship's open engine. A spark, a burst of flame, and a loud shaking boom as the engine cracked and the ship collapsed back to the ground. Silence, then cheers from the hills. The Threlians had just struck their first real blow together. Not because they were the strongest, but because they believed. When the fighting ended and the Kargax retreated once more, the humans didn't cheer or celebrate. They just sat down, tired, wiping sweat from their faces. But when they looked around, they smiled. Because they didn't win the battle alone. The 3 aliens had stood with them, and in that moment, something changed forever. They weren't just protecting the 3 aliens anymore. They were fighting beside them. After the battle, the valley was quiet. Smoke still rose in the distance. The ground was scorched in places. Few broken weapons and pieces of armor lay scattered where the fighting had happened. Air smelled like metal and burned leaves. But something was different now. This time, the Threlians had not just survived. They had fought back. The humans gathered in a small circle outside the caves, checking their injuries and cleaning their gear. One had a cut above the eye. Another was limping slightly. But no one complained. No one asked for praise. Instead, they checked on each other quietly, offering water, wrapping bandages, and sharing a piece of hard bread between them. Not far from them, the Threlians were doing the same. They worked side by side, not with fear, but with focus. They helped each other gather supplies, clear broken trees, and rebuild the outer shelter. But the moment that truly changed everything came later. A young Threlian walked up to one of the humans and handed over a small piece of cloth. It was stitched by hand, showing a simple Mark II shapes standing side by side. One tall, one thin. Together the human looked at it for a long time, then gave a slow nod. No words were needed. From that day, the Threlians longer saw the humans as strangers. They saw them as brothers, sisters, friends. But not all moments were easy. Later that night, human soldiers sat near the fire, holding something in their hand. It was a small item, worn and personal, maybe a photo, maybe a note. No one asked. But their eyes were red, and they sat very still. The battle had taken a toll, not just on the body, but on the heart. One Threlian sat beside them in silence. No questions, no words, just quiet company. And somehow, that helped more than anything. Because even strong people need time to feel. The next few days were spent preparing. The humans knew the Kargax would return. Maybe not today, maybe not tomorrow. But they always came back. And next time it could be worse, so they trained harder. The 3 Lins joined in willingly this time. They wanted to learn, not just to fight, but to think like the humans, quick, calm, and clever. They practiced in pairs, running drills, learning how to stay hidden, how to set distractions, and how to move fast without being seen. One human showed them how to use sound against the enemy, breaking branches or dropping stones to lead the Kargax the wrong way. Another taught them how to tell a story through signals, flashes of light, taps on stone, symbols drawn in dust. It wasn't just about strength, it was about survival. And survival, the humans taught, always starts in the mind. But something else was growing to respect. The Threlians respected the humans not for their power, but for their patience, for their ability to care and to protect even when tired, even when hurting, and the humans? They had started to admire the three aliens too. Not for their skills, but for their heart, for choosing to stand up, even when they were afraid, for fighting. Not out of hate, but out of love for their people. That kind of courage was rare. One morning, a small group of 3 alien children brought fresh fruit to the humans' camp. It wasn't much, just a simple gift. But the smile it brought to the humans' faces said everything. No speech, no ceremony, just one quiet moment of trust, and in a galaxy full of war, fear, and silence. Moments like that meant more than weapons ever could. The days passed quietly, but everyone knew the silence wouldn't last. The humans kept a careful eye on the sky. Their scanners picked up strange signals, more movement from the Kargak's fleet. The enemy was regrouping, planning something bigger. A final attack, maybe? A last attempt to take full control? But this time, the Threllians were ready. They weren't just watching anymore. They were working beside the humans, shoulder to shoulder like one team. Every task was shared. Every lesson repeated. Even the older ones, who once refused to pick up a tool, were now helping build defenses. The valley was no longer just a hiding place. It was becoming a stronghold. One afternoon, while clearing debris, a Threllian found a piece of their old school, building burned and broken. They stood silently, staring at it, remembering the life before the war, the laughter, the calm, the safety. A human walked over, not saying anything at first, then gently placed a hand on the Threllian's shoulder. "You'll build again," they said softly. "Better than before." And that simple line stayed with everyone, because rebuilding wasn't just about buildings, it was about hope. Meanwhile, one of the human engineers made something special. Using damaged farming drones and leftover parts, they rebuilt Small Helper. Machines, fast, light, and smart. Not weapons, but support units. They could carry supplies, spot enemies, even project holograms to confuse attackers. The Threllians were amazed. "These were made to harvest crops," one of them said. "Now, they protect lives," the human replied. That's how things had changed. Tools once used for peace were now tools for survival. And no one was wasting anything, not even time. Training continued day and night, not just fighting, but strategy, thinking, decision-making under pressure. The humans taught the Threllians how to move as a team, how to trust instincts, how to look for weaknesses and never waste energy. But it wasn't all serious. Sometimes in the evenings they laughed, shared food, told stories. The Threllians would sing quiet songs in their language, and the humans would listen, smiling. In return, the humans told wild tales of Earth of animals that could climb mountains, swim deep oceans, or survive freezing winters. The Threllians were shocked. "Your world sounds dangerous," one said. The human just nodded. "It is. It made us strong, and now that strength was here. Not to scare, not to take, but to protect." Then, one night the alarm sounded again. A new ship had landed far from the valley. Not Kargaks, but something else. The humans and Threllians approached carefully. What they found was surprising: a small scout ship, badly damaged. With a single passenger, another alien, this time from a peaceful system far away. His face was tired, eyes filled with fear. He had run from a nearby planet. "It's gone," he said. "The Kargaks took it all. No one fought back. They had no chance." He looked around at the group in front of him, humans covered in dust. Threllians holding tools like weapons, tired but alert. Then he said something that hit deep. "You're the only ones still standing." The humans exchanged quiet glances. They didn't look proud, just serious, because the truth was clear now. They weren't just fighting to protect this one planet anymore. They were holding the line for others too. For every peaceful world that couldn't defend itself, for every voice that cried out and got silence in return. And even though Earth was far away, their duty wasn't. They were Deathworlders, not monsters, not saviors, just people who knew how to survive and refused to let the galaxy fall without a fight. The final sunrise came slowly. The valley, once full of fear and silence, now stood combat, alert. Everyone knew this would be the day. The Kargaks had regrouped. Their ships were larger, louder, more organized. This wasn't a raid. This was their full force, sent to crush everything. But what they didn't know is that the people waiting below were not the same ones they attacked before. The humans stood at the front dust, on their armor, eyes sharp. Behind them, the Threlians stood with firm hands, shields made from scrap and minds full of courage. They were no longer hiding. They were ready. As the enemy ships entered the atmosphere, shaking the sky, the humans moved without panic. They gave signals, not orders. Everyone knew the plan. It had been practiced again and again until it felt. Like instinct, the enemy landed fast. But this time, the first shots didn't come from the Kargaks. They came from the trees. Small traps went off, smoke, sound, confusion. The same tricks the humans had used before, but now set by Threlian hands. The Kargak soldiers stumbled. The terrain wasn't familiar. Air was thick with dust and echoes. It felt like the ground itself was fighting back. Then the real battle began. Humans and Threlians fought side by side. They weren't the same, one group trained by survival, the other trained by heart. But together, they moved like one body. The humans attacked with precision, using every weakness they had learned. The Threlians supported, blocked, distracted, and defended each other without fear. It wasn't easy. Some fell. Some were wounded. A Threlian carrying supplies got caught in crossfire, and a human ran through the chaos just to pull them to safety. No one thought twice. They were all in it together, and slowly, the tide began to turn. The Kargaks were stronger. Yes, but they didn't expect this kind of resistance. They weren't prepared for unity. They didn't understand how a group with less power could still stand tall. They didn't understand why these people were fighting so hard, but it became clear in every moment. They weren't fighting for land. They weren't fighting for pride. We're fighting for each other. One of the human scouts made it close to the enemy's command ship. It was massive, armored, and guarded, but the scout didn't go alone. Two Threlians followed, moving through shadows, covering every angle. The plan was risky, but it worked. Together, it planted a pulse device. When it went off, the entire Kargak ship lost power. And with that, the enemy line fell apart. The Kargaks began retreating, fast and unorganized. Their strongest weapon had failed, and worse, they had lost their grip on fear. The people they thought would be easy to break had fought back, and won when the dust finally settled. Hey! The valley stood quiet again, but this time the silence felt different. It wasn't fear, it was peace. The humans gathered their gear. A few sat on rocks, resting, smiling softly. The Threlians moved through the field, checking on the injured, helping the tired, offering water and warmth. There were no speeches, no celebration, just small acts of care. That was enough. Later that night, fire was lit not for defense, but for warmth. Around it, the humans and Threlians sat together. No longer strangers, no longer separated by language or fear, just people who had faced something dark and come through it together. One of the Threlians looked up at the stars and said quietly, "We thought no one would come." A human replied, "We heard you." Simple words, but they carried weight. And though the humans would leave one day, their footprints would stay forever. Not just in the dirt, but in the hearts of the people they stood beside. Because sometimes, real strength isn't in how loud you fight, it's in why you choose to stand. And the Deathworlders, these humans from a wild, dangerous planet, had stood not for power, but for peace.